Hey, welcome back. Today I'll be making one of my favorite Sichuan dishes, a briny, spicy long bean stir fry called Pao Zhang Dou Cao Rou Mo. Literally pickled long beans and fried mincemeat. Now, pickled long beans can be found in your local Chinese grocery store, but if you don't have one, making them is pretty easy, so let's do that. Here I've got a 2-liter mason jar. Use a pickling jar if you've got one, but this will do just fine. To that, we're gonna add our pickling spices and we're gonna build up our brine. So go ahead and toss in 3 or 4 star anise, about a tablespoon of Sichuan peppercorns, measure out 240 grams of salt, and use pickling salt if you got it. Add in 40 grams of rock sugar. If you can't find this, then regular sugar will do in a pinch. I've got 30 grams of unpeeled garlic cloves, and about 150 grams of red chilies. Basically any small spicy chili that has a mild flavor. Now let's twist a bunch of long beans into the jar so they spiral tightly inside. I also like to give the jar a shake to make sure that the salt is evenly distributed. And they'll shrink as the salt draws out moisture from the beans. So now let's add in 1.5 liters of water. It should come all the way to the mouth of the jar and the beans should be fully submerged. I had to cut the ones at the top to make sure they all fit in, so do so if you need to. Now let's cover up the jar and let it ferment for 10 days. After the first day, you should see some bubbles forming, which is evidence of fermentation. And by the end of the 10 days, the bubbling should have subsided. And by the way, the pressure shouldn't be enough to be able to crack your jar, but just in case, be sure to give it a burp once a day, just to let out some excess gas. Okay, now that our pickles are ready, we can get on with the stir fry. For the meat, I've got 150 grams of pork. It may not seem like much, but it's really meant as a textural element. The beans should really be the star of the show. And you can totally use ground chicken or tofu or seitan if you can eat pork. Now, my butcher didn't have ground pork, so I got some pork shoulder and went ahead and minced it myself. But I do think ground pork will make for a better texture here, so go ahead and get that if you can. Add that to a bowl and let's marinate it with 5 milliliters each of Shaoxing Wine and soy sauce, as well as a few cracks of white pepper. Go ahead and give that a thorough mix and set it aside. Now let's prep the long beans by removing them from the jar and chopping them into 5mm segments, discarding the end caps. I'd also recommend giving them a quick rinse to get rid of any excess salt. Now let's throw a wok on the burner and get it extra hot. Let's add a few tablespoons of oil. Cut the heat and add a tablespoon of Sichuan peppercorns. Fry those until they're fragrant and then remove them, reserving the oil in the wok. This will infuse the oil with the flavor of those peppercorns without us running the risk of biting into one when we go to eat this later on. This is something a lot of us Sichuan food enthusiasts have experienced in the past, and it almost feels like an electric shock in your mouth. Let's do the same with a tablespoon of minced ginger. Turn the heat back up to medium-high, let them get fragrant, and then remove them. Finally, let's add 3 sliced cloves of garlic, as well as 9 sliced and de-seeded dried chilies. Along with 10 of the pickled chilies that we've also sliced up. And just a warning, you'll probably start sneezing at this point, so have a tissue box handy. Trust me. Let those get fragrant, but don't remove them. And then we can go in with our ground pork. Fry the pork until golden, chopping it up into granules as it cooks. Now let's add 15 mils of Shaoxing Wine and continue to stir fry until it's mostly evaporated. Then we can go in with the long beans. Let's season with 5 grams of salt, 5 grams of sugar, and 15 mils of soy sauce. Go ahead and stir fry that over high heat for 2 to 3 minutes until the soy sauce is mostly evaporated and concentrated into a rich coating on the long beans and pork. And now we're ready to serve. Oh my God, I'm sweating. Whew. So nice, so spice. You already know how I feel about spicy food, so be warned ahead of time. If you don't want it to be that spicy, don't add in the chili peppers at all. If I'm feeling this sniffly right now, then I think you can understand how spicy it actually is. But you get this brininess from the pickles, you get the spice from the chili peppers, you get the numminess from the Sichuan peppercorns. It just comes together in such a well-balanced, lovely way that a lot of vegetable dishes just don't match up to. And the pork is really just there for texture. So if you want to replace that with some chicken, some tofu, some seitan, then feel free, it'll come out just as nicely. So if you're in the mood for something that's just really special and will light your face on fire, I do hope you give this a try. It's one of my favorite dishes, and if you do try it out, then let me know in the comments how it turns out. See you next time. Cheers.